Welcome back to the Testudo Talk podcast. I'm Andrew Chodes alongside Colin McNamara. We just saw one of the ugliest displays of football one can ever see, but Maryland does prevail, wins 13-10 off a game-winning field goal from Jack Howes, clinches bowl eligibility for the third straight season. Colin, your initial thoughts, and I don't know how we were able to get through this game while actually focusing it was that ugly.
Yeah, just biggest takeaways is the 4 game losing streak is finally over. We always thought, it has to end at some point. But there's always possibility that doesn't with, Rutgers and Michigan, kind of on deck here. So, just good for Maryland football to get themselves out of a hole and, hopefully finish the season strong with, a win or two against Rutgers and Michigan.
Yeah, for sure. Then for those who didn't watch, because the game was only available for streaming on Peacock, which is the whole different discussion. I mean, this game from the jump, it was just turnover after turnover, penalty after penalty. There were 8 combined turnovers in this game, and that doesn't even include Maryland's 2 failed fourth down conversions. We kind of just to go through drive by drive of how this game started. So the first 6 drives of the game for Maryland were punt, punt, punt. 2 of those got into Nebraska territory, so they came off with 0 points in those drives. Nebraska's first 3 drives, interception, punt, turnover on downs. The fourth drive for the teams, Maryland gets on the board late in the first half. Ty Felton scores a touchdown, and then Nebraska throws another interception. So it was just so ugly from the hop. But once Maryland took that lead, then the game went completely out of hand. It was insane. So Maryland up 7-0. They're driving at the end of the half. Corey Dyches gets called for a questionable unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. I think there was some pushing and shoving. He had the retaliation. But Maryland took 10 penalties in this game, 4 of them after the whistle. I asked Coach Loxley about that post game. He wasn't a fan of the question, but I think it is something that they do need to answer because this is a few games in a row now where we've seen that lack of discipline.
Yeah. And it was just a bunch of miscues, just kind of what the game was defined by. It's like somebody would get momentum. Maryland would hit a couple deep plays. Oh, backed up by a penalty. Then they'd fumble the ball, at the 4 yard line, Roman Hemby. But luckily, Nebraska was just as bad in the miscues department. Roman Hemby fumbled the ball on the 4 yard line. Maryland still ended up with the ball at like the 20 yard line because they threw another interception. It was just back and forth of just turnovers and turnovers. It was like whoever had the least amount of miscues was going to win this game. And luckily for Maryland, they had 3 turnovers compared to Nebraska's 5.
Yeah, and each of Nebraska's final 3 drives. So this game was like it was a 10-10 game, in the fourth quarter, and Nebraska's final 3 drives ended in a fumble, an interception, and an interception. Maryland forced 5 Nebraska turnovers. Tar Heel Still and Dante Trader Jr. each had 2 interceptions. Tar Heel Still had the biggest one of the game. Obviously, after Roman Hemby had the fumble inside the 4 yard line, which would have given Maryland, if they scored, the lead late in the game. Nebraska's third string quarterback, Chubba Purdy. How they got that situation? Nebraska's starter, Heinrich Harburg, initially got injured, then came back, but Matt Rule decided to rely on Jeff Sims, the backup. He had some success on the ground, but he finished with 0 passing, or the exact number. I don't want to get this wrong. He finished with 62 passing yards. Harburg had 0, so he finished with 62 passing yards, 2 interceptions. But yeah, then the third string quarterback, Chubba Purdy, came in, drives Nebraska all the way down in the final minutes of the game. But then on 3rd and goal, throws interception to Tar Heel Still, and then Maryland drives all the way down the field, and Jack Howes, who had 2 kicks this game, made both his kicks. Nice to see that for him. Obviously struggled in the beginning of the season. I know, Colin, you wrote a little bit on Jack Howes. So he got the game-winning field goal from 23 yards out. But yeah, I mean, Nebraska's offense, their passing offense is one of the worst in the Big Ten, but you still have to credit Maryland's defense, obviously, to force 5 turnovers in a game, 3 turnovers, 3 turnovers in the final 3 possessions, a couple of red zone turnovers. Obviously, I mean, you have to credit them. They won this game. But it wasn't even like Taulia Tagovailoa was big. Maryland's offense was bad, right? It was the turnovers. I mean, they drive deep into Nebraska territory, the Hemby fumble. They drive deep into before they could drive deep, Ty Felton has a fumble as well. So it's just costly turnovers, almost cost the Terps today. But fortunate for them, Nebraska's offense was just hard to watch. And Maryland's defense was able to take advantage, create a lot of the big plays that we saw earlier on in the season. But I mean, yeah, to see Nebraska go with three quarterbacks, 8 turnovers in a game, just crazy.
Yeah. And this was 100% Maryland's game to lose.
Oh yeah.
I mean, their 10 points came off of the two Maryland turnovers. Ty Felton fumbled the ball. They come down, they score a touchdown. They only have, 30 yards to go until the end zone. Then Talia throws an interception. Defense is able to make a stand and just, force a field goal there. But absolutely Maryland's game to lose. If they don't have any turnovers, Nebraska doesn't score a single point. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that offense wasn't really doing much. And when they did much, they just turned the ball right over. And for those who kind of heard Chubba Purdy, yes, that's the, younger brother of Brock Purdy. So we kind of had a NFL quarterback younger brother duel here with Talia Tagovailoa, obviously the brother of Tua, and Chubba Purdy, the brother of 49ers quarterback Brock. So that was kind of an interesting tidbit that Brock or Brock's brother Chubba got into the game, third string quarterback. You don't see that often.
Yeah, no, and we talk a lot about the passing game and the quarterback, but we should talk about the rushing game. Obviously, something that has plagued Maryland for the past few games. They haven't been able to get it going at all, and we saw a lot of that in the first half. They elected to run the ball just 7 times. They got 0 net yards, right? So I mean, look at last game against Penn State. They netted negative yards. They had 0 yards going to halftime. But then Josh Gaddis finally decides in the second half, all right, our running game's struggling, but we have to put the ball in the hands of Roman Hemby, and they decided to do that. And in the second half, they got 101 rushing yards. And despite the turnovers at the end of drives, that kind of catapulted the offense, right? And it gave them some momentum, and even for the next 2 games, right, to know they do have something in your run game. And they had 20 rushing attempts in the second half. They were successful on that, so I think that's a really encouraging sign for Maryland.
Right. And this has kind of been talked a lot throughout the last couple of weeks when Maryland struggled to run the ball. It's Loxley, being asked of pressers. Am I supposed to run the ball more? Do you guys know if running the ball more actually helps you win? Kind of jokingly asking reporters that. But just kind of to see them running the ball more in the second half and then actually leading to success. Hopefully they kind of lean on that more because obviously Roman Hemby's having a down year from what he had last year. So it'd be nice to see them kind of rely on that more because it is a more kind of consistent piece of offense is the running game. I know the offensive line hasn't necessarily been great this year, but you still kind of have to rely on that if you want to win football games, especially in the Big Ten where kind of running the ball is so important.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned this before, but obviously snapping the 4 game losing streak, it's a huge confidence boost for this team, no matter how ugly the win is. But when you look at your next 2 opponents, right, obviously Rutgers is playing really good football, and then you go against Michigan, who just defeated Penn State without without Harbaugh. Michigan is, they're in line to make the college football playoff. It's all going to come down to the game versus Ohio State. And when you look what Maryland did today, for me, the most concerning part is what happened in the red zone. They had 5 trips to the red zone. They came away with just 13 points and had 2 turnovers. If you do that against Michigan and right now even Rutgers, you're not going to win the game and you're going to lose in, I think, convincing fashion. You have to take advantage of your opportunities, and they're not doing that. And I think that's so damaging for Maryland because they're getting yards. I mean, they finished with almost 400 yards on the afternoon. We see they have 5 trips to the red zone, so they have opportunities to score, and they had so many opportunities to go ahead, but they keep on hurting themselves, right? It's the 3 turnovers, it's the 2 failed fourth down conversions. But again, they got the win. They're bowl eligible for the 3rd straight season, so that is the main takeaway. But for me, I think there's just a lot more concerns that come out of this game than there are positives.
Right, yeah, and kind of to call back to the Redstone struggles, it's kind of a reminder of their game against Ohio State where they get the ball into opponent territory inside, the 30-yard line, and then either they turn the ball over or they don't get it on a fourth down and short. It seems just like that Maryland cannot consistently find a play that they can, pick up a 4th and 2, a 4th and 1. It always seems it's either an incomplete pass that nobody's open on or they hand the ball off to Antoine Littleton, he gets stuffed.
Wait, not to interrupt, but for the life of me, I cannot understand the Antoine Littleton rush out of shotgun. They've done that at least 3 or 4 times on fourth down this season, and instead of either going, just a QB sneak or just a traditional run, they decide to go to their backup running back and they go out of the shotgun. So you're putting yourself already 3 yards behind the sticks, and they're not getting it. That play makes no sense to me, and they keep on relying on it. Sorry to interrupt. I just have to put that out there.
No, yeah, that's we this is the same play that we've called upon and criticized them for, over a month ago against Ohio State, and they still continue to go back to it no matter how many times it doesn't work.
And it takes momentum away. That's the other thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, at the end of the day, like you said, you need to snap this 4-game winning streak. Doesn't really matter how it came. It needed to be done. Bowl eligibility. This was the best chance you had for the remaining of the season with, Rutgers standing at 6-3. They have a game against Iowa today, big game. So we'll see how that kind of plays out. But then Michigan, the number 2 ranked team in the country. I mean, that's quite the tall task along with Rutgers at Rutgers. So this is kind of the game you need to win, and Maryland did that.
Let's have some fun here. Obviously, this game, 13-10, 8 combined turnovers. Do you think there's going to be more or less points scored in the Rutgers-Iowa game than there was in this game?
I'm gonna go with more. It's really hard to beat less than 23 points, like total. I know it's Iowa, but I still think it's hard. I mean, we were predicting in the preview a low scoring game, and my low scoring game was 20-17. Your low scoring game was 23-14. And I mean, that's what we thought the low scoring game was going to be, and it's even lower than that.
But even still, those scores should have been closer to those scores, because it's the turnovers in the red zone, and it's the fumbles, and it's the penalties, and it's just you're driving, you have the opportunity to score, and then it's just the self-inflicted wounds. I know Mike Locksley said in his presser that he was going to go to the Big Ten and share some of the film of the calls he didn't agree with. So obviously, a little excuse there, but I think in general you can't be committing 10 penalties for after the whistle. I think something else we didn't touch on, which we probably should, was that Colton Spengler was injured. He wasn't able to punt in this game, but Maryland did rely on its backup punter, and he played really, 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 really well. He pinned the Huskers inside their own 10-yard line twice. Brendan Zagovia. So I think when the availability report came out, it looked like Spengler was questionable, and now this backup punter comes in, and he's excellent. All 3 of his punts are inside the 20. Pins them inside the 10 twice. So again, just it's kind of a next man up mentality, which also helped the Terps today.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of a thing to look for in the future with, Colton being a senior and all. But Colton was still on the field. He still made an appearance on the field. He was the one holding for the Jack Howes field goal, so that consistency was still there. He wasn't too banged up to not be able to do that.
I mean, we can laugh, but I mean, special teams were absolutely huge in this game. I mean, Segovia, pinning a really struggling Nebraska offense who wasn't really able to generate anything. Jack Howes hits both his field goals. He nets the game winner. So you never know where the most important plays are going to come from. And today, some of those came from Maryland special teams, kind of an unlikely source. But again, instant reactions, obviously, might be overreacting a little bit, but Maryland is able to prevail against Nebraska despite a really ugly performance by both teams, wins 13-10, and is bowl eligible for the 3rd straight season. Thank you for listening to the Testudo Talk podcast. We'll be back next week. I don't know if Colin will be. I think Emmett Siegel, he might be subbing in, but either way, thank you for tuning in.